The advice and opinions expressed by Dr. Granpeesheh and her guests are meant solely as suggestion and should not be in any way construed as child-specific advice.
Dr. Doreen Granpeesheh is the
Dr. Doreen is an expert in autism.
Doreen Granpeesheh.
Dr. Granpeesheh.
Dr. Doreen Granpeesheh.
Dr. Doreen Granpeesheh is a visionary in the field of autism. Now you can ask her questions on Ask Dr. Doreen. Good morning and welcome to Ask Dr. Doreen. I'm Shannon Penrod and I am here live with Dr. Doreen Granpeesheh. Good morning, Dr. Granpeesheh.
Good morning, Shannon, and good morning, everyone. And forgive me for not coming in, but I didn't want to spread my germs today. I'm a little bit under the weather.
Well, we appreciate you, and we appreciate you still doing the show, even while you're under the weather, but we're hoping and praying that you feel better soon. Sooner as opposed to later. We are live this morning. It is the Tuesday after Thanksgiving, which means it is Giving Tuesday. I want to talk about all of that, but remind all of you that we're live right now on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, as well as about a dozen other sites. Our fabulous Chris Desmond is showing them to you on the screen right now, but we know that a lot of you listen in podcasts. We're thrilled to be able to be a free download wherever you get your podcasts. That does mean you're going to listen to some advertisements. That's what makes it free for you guys. We hope that you embrace that and love that. If you are someone, some of you have written in and said, I'm exercising and it throws off my rhythm when I'm listening to the ads, you want to get it ad free, you can for a very small monthly cost. It's $5 a month. And that you go to glow.fm/autismlive. Don't be mistaken. When you pay that $5, you get everything the Autism Network does, including Ask Dr. Doreen, directly into your inbox with no ads, which is wonderful. But I also love that we're able to provide it for those of you who want to get it free of cost. We're doing a shout out right now to Rodney. We're so thrilled to have you here with us live. And a reminder to everybody, that's exactly how you participate in the show. If you're watching us live, tell us that you're watching, say hi, we'll say hi back to you. Better yet, if you have a question for Dr. Granpeesheh, write your question in. Our starting topic, our overreaching topic today is teaching executive function skills, but you can write in about absolutely anything that you want to write in on. I know for years I was really confused about executive function skills, and I'll ask Dr. Granpeesheh, but I have to remember, this is my note to myself. We've got to talk briefly about Giving Tuesday. So this is a day, I don't know when this started, 10, 12 years ago, that after Thanksgiving, they just created a day in which nonprofits could assault you with requests to please. It's the year end. It's a perfect time to donate. I know you're getting lots of messages. I'm getting messages on my phone and on my Facebook. Everybody wants a little bit of money from you, but let us state our case here. We have a charity that we would like for you to give whatever you have between the couch cushions or whatever you're looking to donate, because it's end of year and you want that tax benefit from being able to donate to a registered 501c3. And you started a charity, Dr. Granpeesheh, that is very near and dear to both of our hearts, called Autism Care Today. This is a very special organization that I think if you talk to any parent of any kiddo, teen, or adult on the spectrum, they will tell you that there are things they wish that they could give their child, that they know would help their child, but it's not in the budget because there are other things that, bills that have to be paid, all kinds of things, but there are things that they're not able to do for their child, including the heartbreak of all heartbreak for me is after my generation of parents fought so hard for all of you to get insurance to cover ABA. But now there are parents who will tell me on a regular basis, and I know you've heard this too, Dr. Granpeesheh, that they can't afford the copays. Right. The copays make it so that they can't even access the health care that we fought so hard for them to get. But Autism Care Today, what they do is brilliant. I don't know how you came up with this, but it's absolutely brilliant, Dr. Granpeesheh. that you give grants to things for families that families get to specify. So
Right.
if a family needs copay, I'm talking too much, but I want you to jump in whenever you can, but I know you're saving voice. You have given money for copays, for summer camps, for swimming lessons, for assistance dogs, for companion dogs, for medical testing.
iPad, fencing, safety equipment.
Yes, so much for safety equipment. You have so many different programs for Act Today that are, that go into different areas. Like, for instance, there is a program just for military families.
Right.
Because the statistics show us that autism is more prevalent in the military community than it is outside. And it's harder hit because they tend to move every 2 to 3 years. Imagine just getting all your programs situated for your child and then being told, in order to serve your country, you got to move your family. Ooh.
And also there's usually one or sometimes even both parents who are deployed.
Yes.
So it is extremely hard for military families. That's right, Shannon.
Yes. So there's a special program that's just for military families, but really anybody, this is in the United States, because I see that we have somebody wonderfully joining us from Canada and somebody from South Africa. So thrilled that you're here. This charity does service the United States, but the need is so great, and we never have enough money to fulfill even half of the grants that are requested. It really comes down to how much money can we fundraise. So if you've got some money that you're looking to donate for end of year giving, or just because you want to feel in this holiday spirit that you've done something for someone else, there is no amount that is too small to donate to Autism Care Today. You can go to act-today.org. There is a place to donate right now for Giving Tuesday. We encourage you to give whatever you can. Anything you want to say, Dr. Granpeesheh?
Yeah, just that, a lot of charities also have a big staff, and we don't, just so that you're assured that almost all of your money goes directly to families. So I think that's an important part of it as well, Shannon, is that we don't spend it on things. We donate it to families who are in need. Absolutely.
Yes. I volunteer strenuously with Act Today, and most of what happens is volunteers. So want to encourage you. We just had the All Ghouls Gala, which is our biggest fundraiser of the year. And I haven't really had a chance to tell you, Dr. Granpeesheh, how many people at the end of the party came up to me and said, I never really thought about it before, but I'd like to volunteer for this charity. And I was like furiously taking down names.
Awesome. Yeah, I also had a lot of people tell me that they wanted to help us with our next event, or help us do additional events. So I know that it's a wonderful event, and a lot of people put a lot of heart and time into it.
Yes. All for good cause. So please donate generously, act-today.org. I have been fortunate enough to be on the phone when sometimes they do a conference call and they'll call a family and say, your grant is being granted. It's happening. It's on its way to you. And it usually happens at the end of the year, right around Christmas. And the families are so overjoyed. I have also been on the phone when, after all the grants are given out, and people call and say, why wasn't my grant granted? I've been on both sides of that equation, and believe me, it's better when we can grant it. So please do what you can, give what you can, check the couch cushions. There is no amount that's too small. If everybody gave $5, we would be able to help a whole lot of people. So there we go. Oh, good night from England. Every day I hear all your recordings. Very helpful and gain a lot. I love that. Thank you, Park. We're saying hi to Rosie. We're saying hi to Belinda, who's writing to us from South Africa, and Diane, who's writing to us from Canada, as well as Rodney. So thrilled that you guys are here. If you have questions, feel free to go ahead and write them in now. I'm going to start with some executive function questions, but then we're open it up to everything. I see your question already, Park. I'll get to it in just a second. But I loved this question because I love hearing from teachers. The question is, I teach 7th grade English, and each year I am noticing I have more and more kiddos that identify as being neurodiverse. Notably, they all either have a 504 or an IEP. I do a project in the spring that requires my students to complete a huge project that has 20 assignments all on a deadline. What is the best way to support my neurodivergent students for them to meet their deadlines and not just wait until the night before?
What a great question, and I'm so happy that the teacher took the time to write into us. That's awesome.
Yes.
It's interesting. We realized a long time ago that planning is kind of a difficult skill for a lot of our kids. That's actually why we developed the whole executive function curriculum, because we started to realize that, we need to work a little bit more on the details or the different areas that go into being able to plan something in the future. And I'll just throw out some examples here. When we plan something that is, and this starts to happen, by the way, a lot more in middle school, and our kids are just not prepared because they don't know how to plan something that is not an immediate happening or event. So let's say a teacher, and this starts in middle school, where a teacher will say, okay, we have an assignment, and the assignment is, as this teacher wrote, a bigger assignment, and it's due in 3 weeks, and it involves all these different steps. So for a child to be able to actually manage that, a few different things have to happen, right? The child has to start, break it down. First of all, they have to kind of break it down into all the different parts that are going to culminate into this bigger project, right? As this teacher wrote, it could, for instance, have to do with research or interviewing people or just, developing different plans for different parts of it. And so that's, I guess, number one. I had a teacher many, many years ago myself, the first teacher who taught me how to produce an outline. And it's such an important tool and something that sometimes our kids don't know how to do. And so really it has to do with sitting with the child and having them identify the bigger goal, and then having them identify kind of the subparts of this, sort of like an outline. What are the things that I have to do? What are the different areas that I have to complete before I get to this final project? Once you have that, then you need to put that into like a timeline. So let's say if I have 3 weeks for the final project and there's 5 different parts to this that I have to complete, now I have to figure out how much time does each part take and by what date should each section be completed so that it's a continuous process. That is a lot of work, and that's kind of what we work on, those types of things with our kids. You as a teacher who's so caring, that you write into us, you could definitely sit down with the children and just say, okay, let's do this together. How much time do you think it'll take? Will you be able to do this in 1 day, 3 days, 5 days, and help them? Because that kind of thing, if it's their first time, obviously they're going to need a lot of guidance. So now you have an outline and you know exactly how many days each portion will take, and you put it on a calendar for the child. You can sit down and say, okay, so by Tuesday, you need to have this section done. By Thursday, this section. By next Wednesday, this section, and so on. And it's not done yet, because really, if today is, let's say, Sunday, and you're supposed to have your first section done by Tuesday, you kind of need to now break it down into every single day for the individual. So break it down into as small a part as you can. Okay, so if we need to have all these interviews, let's say, done by Tuesday, let's see, there's 5 people you have to interview, and we have 5 days. That means what? That means you have to interview one person every day. So you really break it down as far as you possibly can so that the child can really have a really good plan of how to approach this project. And of course, you want to make sure that if they have any questions along the way, they can come back and talk to you and ask questions. This type of skill, you're not just doing it for this particular project. It'll be something that the child can use across their lifetime, across lots of different things that they encounter in life. You know, when you're in college, when you're looking for a job, there's so many different things that we do that require this long-term planning. And being able to help someone break it down and actually identify how they can manage to get it done is so valuable. You know, I see a lot of typically developing adolescents and adults who don't have this skill.
Yeah.
And what ends up happening is that they're so overwhelmed that they freeze and they procrastinate and they avoid the task altogether just because they've never learned the skill of being able to break it down into subparts. Now, you know, Shannon, you know, and I want you to give you a chance to talk about this, but you know that in ABA, we teach a lot more than just breaking things down. We also teach our kids how to inhibit, get distractions, right? Getting distracted by other things. And there's lots of other parts to getting an overall plan completed. But I think for this teacher and for this project, that's what needs to happen.
Absolutely. And I just want to say, you know, because former classroom teacher here, I love a good visual support. And, you know, a lot of junior highs now at the beginning of the year will give their kids a planner and make it part of their experience to do that. And I think a planner is great. I think most of us do things online now, so it's a little bit of but I do think that there's something about writing it down that gets it into their brain. But having something in your classroom that's like a calendar and shows the different things, or whether it's like a thermometer that, you know, you got this done and this done, some sort of a visual thing that shows, because I'll be honest that I think, you know, as you were saying about the putting it all together, ABA helps you to take it all apart and put it all back together. One of the things that I've learned from reading your executive functions, the lessons, is that you know, there's so many parts to it. And I know for myself, one of the places where I fall down is that sometimes I go, okay, so this is what I have to do. And then I'm just going to do that. And I forget to check and see, is that working? You're always reminding me, but Shannon, is that working? What's the data on that? Is that working? Because I'm like, well, that's what we're doing. And that, you know, for 7th graders, so, you know, you have your thermometer or the calendar or whatever it is, and you set the deadlines, but then helping them to notice, oh, okay, I didn't get Tuesday's writing done. Now it's Wednesday. What do I need to do to catch up? Or I'm going to be on Thursday and I'm still missing Tuesday. And that noticing, that's really something that you've taught me. But as you say, it's useful.
It's so important what you said. You know, this is why one of the reasons that my schedule, as you know, which is kind of a horrific schedule, I fight to keep my Fridays at least partially open or unscheduled, because you will always fall behind and you will always need a scheduled time just to catch up. And I think that is one of the things that we learn through planning as well and through these activities. It's like, okay, what do I do if I actually can't stay with this plan?
Yeah.
And how are some ways that I can catch up? That's really, really important.
But I also think, you know, I live off my Outlook calendar now. Just before I came in the studio, I was looking at it and going, oh, I didn't realize I had that. Oh, you know, And I really have to look at it, that visual thing. So I do think it's critical that the kiddos have a planner or that we give them something on a device, because I don't know how to manage my life anymore without that.
Right.
And I don't,
Right.
and I think the way things move now, especially now that there's so much that happens on Zoom and all these different technology ways that people connect. And it's this way for our teenagers too. Don't be mistaken. Kids have things that they have to do that aren't always a physical must be their thing, although they do have that as well. So I encourage you, the visual thing, I think critical, and teaching them how to use a planner or teaching them how to use a calendar.
There's, I don't know anymore. I mean, just like you, my kids are older and adults, so I don't know if they actually. I remember my kids, who were in their 20s now, did get a planner, as well as, of course, they all had a laptop. But I don't know if they get planners anymore these days, or if or if everything is just online. Right. And if it is, then there are a lot of really, really good planners and schedulers and apps that help you generate a to-do list and do it in like lots of different ways, whether it's, on a calendar or just on a list that you can move the parts of the list, that kind of thing. But it is a very, very important skill, and it helps us in every aspect of life. I cannot tell you. Sometimes I look at my 3 children and they have different planning skills. They're all pretty good, honestly, at kind of maintaining long-term plans and getting it done when I think about it. But they're actually, like, one of them in particular is just incredible in terms of fitting everything in and being able to make sure that the plan works.
Yeah. And
I think the more you practice this, the better you get at it. And it's really vital for life.
Absolutely. When I was so confused about executive functions, and I would always ask people, so what does this mean? Excuse me. And I remember one expert that I was talking to said, okay, for instance, every day I drive to school and I drop my child off at school. And as I'm leaving the carpool, I see this mom running down the sidewalk with her child, and she's trying to dress her child. The child has papers sticking out of their backpack. She's running. She's got their breakfast in her hand, and her hair is a mess. Excuse me. And she said, I just want to stop, pull over, and say to this woman, give me 5 minutes and I can make your morning less stressful. Because there are some things that you should be doing at night, but because you just need to plan better. And I thought, I remember thinking, oh no, I'm that woman.
No, but you make such a really good point. I'm glad you gave that example, Shannon, because first of all, there are additional things to do when you have a child on the spectrum, right? So like things may not go as smoothly as you expect. So you will need additional time, a lot of times. And secondly, think about what that chaos produces when you have not planned, and your child doesn't learn how to plan, and it is last minute, and there's panic. Your child, just like you, are going to experience a lot of anxiety.
Yep.
Because it's last minute, you're failing, let's do this, let's do that, we forgot this, we forgot that. And that anxiety is definitely something you want to avoid, both for yourself and for your child. So that's why planning is such an important skill.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I want to get to some questions and some comments, people. I'm saying hi to Judy. Judy says, hello, Shannon and Doreen. It's been a while since I chatted with you live, but still following. Judy, we're so happy to hear from you. And Lucy's here with us too. We're going to get to that in just a second. But Park wrote in a question from England. They said, my son is 8 years old. His speech is not conversational yet. And I think my expectation is high in terms of executive function. Should I lower my expectation?
This is a a great question. I'm really glad you asked this question. I don't want to say you should lower your expectation, but you should maybe lengthen your expectation. I think that's a different way of looking at it. I never encourage parents to lower expectations, because when we lower our expectations, our kids just don't go past what we expect, right? I often tell parents, if you want your child to speak in any, whatever level they're striving for, then make sure that you establish that level and you don't give in. So if we accept answers that are one word in length, the child's always going to stay one word in length. If you expect 3-word phrases to be the response, then you're going to require that every time, and the child's going to get into the habit of doing that. And that applies to everything. So you don't want to lower your expectations, because our kids tend to strive to reach the things that we expect of them. But at the same time, you don't want to set expectations that are unattainable, because that just causes anxiety and depression for our kids, right? You want to make sure that the expectations are just a little bit above where the child is now. And you can always change your expectations, and of course you will change them, but you just don't want to, you want to make sure that your expectations are not so high that your child feels not good enough no matter what they do. So if you set the bar really high, make sure that you're really, really helping, and that you're really supporting, and that you're really rewarding every little step towards that bar, right? Towards that expectation. So you have to kind of watch both sides of it.
Absolutely. I think that balancing act is one of the hardest things that we have to do as parents. On a daily basis, I remember I used to say, I just wish I understood, like, is he not doing this because it's hard for him? Is he not doing this because he can't do it? Is he not doing this because he doesn't want to do it? I wanted to get inside, and what I learned over time is that all of that really wasn't important.
Right.
In the big scheme of things, right? Because I could make it more fun for him so that he wanted to do it. If it was that he wasn't wanting to do it, then that meant that I needed to do something to make it more rewarding for him. It didn't mean that he couldn't learn. If he was struggling with it, it didn't mean that he couldn't do it. It meant that I needed to slow the pace down a little bit, but not give up. And I will tell one quick story that I think I've told before, that, when we started at CARD, we had this big dream that, my son, he was going to graduate from high school. He was going to go to college, that he was going to be able to do whatever he wanted to do. And then, you slog it out day by day, and you have triumphs, and you have days that don't go the way you planned them. And, he finished his program at CARD, and the expectation that I was going to go and do a whole bunch of things. And I had the best parent who told me, how I was going to do that. But then I got comfortable. I just got comfortable. And, and I felt like, maybe we don't have to constantly be pushing. And things weren't going well at school. I'm just going to be honest here. And we didn't know exactly what was wrong. So we asked for an observation. And so our fabulous Peter came to do an observation at the school. And afterwards, he said he would meet me outside the school to discuss, what he had seen. And because Peter and I don't think very many other people would have had the courage to say this to me. But Peter and I went way back, and Peter said, I just want to know when you gave up on more progress. Wow. Oh, and I said, excuse me? And he said, you never ever would have accepted that from anybody else. So I just want to know, on what day did you decide this was enough? And it just cut me right to the core. And he said, there's so much more for him, and there's so much more for you. Why, what has made you give up? And I think part of it was that I was second guessing myself. But anyway, he sort of gave me a pep talk on the sidewalk about, look, there is more to be done.
Right.
I think it's I think sometimes we get comfortable with the status as parents. And then there's the flip that sometimes we're just pushing and not noticing if it's working, which is what I was saying before. So both sides of that equation, but I don't want you to lower your expectations and I don't want you to give up.
Absolutely. And it's interesting. You made me remember something of one of my kids. And it was just kind of the flip side. And it shows a lot of our own personality, I think, kind of falls on our kids, right? Yes. So I remember one of my kids, and I think she was at this point, had maybe just started middle school. And she came to me in the evening, like let's say 7 p.m. or something, and said, "Oh my God, I forgot I have a book report tomorrow." And I have not yet read this book. And I'm one of those people that, if I have a flight at 9 a.m., I'm at the airport at 6. Yeah. Like I always am prepared for things, and because I hate the feeling of panic and anxiety when I'm not ready for something. So I was pretty upset that, okay, we have a book report due tomorrow and we've not done it. So I was pretty upset about it, right? And obviously I forced my child to sit with me and read the thing until I think we read the book until like 2 in the morning or 3 in the morning, and then I wrote this thing and turned it in. And, when I look back at that, and I'm sure she remembers because I was pretty upset about it. Looking back at that, I'm not sure that I would have done the same thing now, because who cares? Like, it's one incident in life, and you want to teach your children to plan, but you also don't want to be punitive about it.
Right.
And you want to just kind of like back off and say, okay, well, you messed up this time. Maybe we need to work on this together. You're going to get a lower grade because you forgot, and that's punishment enough. Like, you don't need me to sit here with you until 3 a.m. and force you to read this thing, and so on. So we kind of have to remember that it has to be fair on both ends. You want to push, but you don't want to push so much that it just causes other issues.
Absolutely. Park went on to tell us that their son is in special school setting. Their BCBA wants to focus to control his aggressive behavior first, so we stop all other skill practices and executive function practices until his aggression is reduced. What do you think about that?
So, Park, you have to understand that aggression usually comes from frustration, and the frustration can be often connected to not being able to express ourselves or not being able to understand what's going on around us. Like, remember, none of the challenging behaviors are a symptom of autism. They're not a symptom of autism. I want to repeat that multiple times. Tantrums and aggression and all of these things are not a symptom of autism. They're a side effect. Because with autism, we have a difficult time understanding what's going on around us. We have a difficult time expressing things the way that we'd like to. And as a result, we get frustrated. And as a result of that frustration, we learn maladaptive ways of communicating. So aggression is usually a way of communicating something, just not a really good way. So the very important thing about dealing with challenging behaviors is understanding their function. And often when you understand the function or why this aggression is happening, it could be that the child is not getting enough access to reinforcers. It could be that the child is trying to avoid certain situations, like learning situations. It could be any of the main functions, right? And once you understand that, or once your BCBA understands that, a lot of times it takes skill teaching to get the child to use a more adaptive way of communicating. So it's almost impossible to deal with a challenging behavior without teaching some form of skill. Doesn't necessarily mean they should be teaching executive function skills or planning skills, but definitely communication skills. Often I find that our kids, when they don't know how to communicate in a very appropriate way, they develop aggressive behaviors or challenging behaviors. So remember that dealing with these challenging behaviors often goes hand in hand with some form of skill teaching.
Absolutely. To that end, I want to give a shout out because Mike Hipple is with us this morning, which is so exciting. Mike, I haven't seen you in a month of Sundays. Mike, who is an expert on what you were just talking about and is always outspoken about making sure that our individuals in our community who do not have spoken language are given functional communication and devices to be able to speak, and who has been outspoken about talking about before he had his device, how punitive it was being trapped in a way of not being able to communicate. So Mike, I'm thrilled you're here for this. Mike also said, no, please have high expectations for school. Lucy, who it's like we have our all-stars here this morning. I just love it. Had said, good morning. So good to see you both, Dr. Granpeesheh and Shannon. She agreed with us, said, I agree with everything you're saying. Our kids are very visual. I noticed that visual prompts help so much with reminders. Executive function is so critical to succeeding with organizational planning. And it is. And I just want to point out, too, that when we're talking about executive functions, we're talking about achieving any goal that you want. And one of my most favorite ways that we taught when Jem was little, working on executive functions and putting the whole thing together, was to plan a play date.
Mm-hmm.
Right. It doesn't have to be something that's just boring and an assignment due, but we would plan a whole play date of, how are we going to invite these friends? What time are they coming? What do we have to do to the house to have it ready so you can play the video game? What are we feeding them? So on and so forth. So
that's right.
Fun stuff. I want to get to another executive function question. I recently had a parent meeting at school for my 4th grade daughter. She has a diagnosis of autism, but she is in a gen ed class that has one aide for the whole class. My daughter has always excelled in school, but this teacher is saying that my daughter has turned in none of her homework this semester. First, I know that she did the work. I watched her do it. Obviously, there's some sort of disconnect when it comes to handing in the work. How do I handle this? Second, why am I just hearing about this? Aren't there rules about this? This question I love because this goes to a lot of what happens in classrooms that we don't get to see as parents. I want to turn to you first, Dr. Granpeesheh, but then I have things to say as well.
That's great. Yeah, no, I mean, I agree with the parent. I think that the very first time that a homework is not turned in is when you should be hearing about it. It should not be after several days or weeks. I don't know how long the period is, but certainly that does not bode well. I would really recommend that you go in and you have a conversation with the teacher and try to go in, give the teacher the benefit of the doubt, and maybe this was all inadvertent and who knows what happened here, but go in trying to really discover what happened and just explain to the teacher that you've seen your child do the homework. So it's a matter of determining why she hasn't turned it in. You would want to also have that conversation with your daughter because there could be a very simple explanation. Like she may not know that part of completing the task is actually turning it in. I don't know. Or maybe she's missing a specific period of time where they just give an instruction that says, everyone who's completed their homework needs to put it on that pile. I'm not sure, but I'm sure there's an explanation for it. And I think it's really important to figure it out because obviously it's not fair to your child. They shouldn't be failing because they missed this one portion of it. And let's assume that the teacher, as you said, it's a gen ed class, and perhaps the teacher has expectations that don't necessarily tie into your child's skills. And you want to make that teacher your ally, because the teacher not being your ally will contribute to your child not doing well. You want to make sure that the teacher is willing to do a little bit extra just to make sure that your child succeeds.
Absolutely. I will just add on to what you said, and say that having been a classroom teacher, and it's so much harder now. I have so many friends that are teachers. It's very hard right now after COVID. Just realize that most people that are working at Target are making more than our teachers right now. So it's very hard. Kids are not typically developing kids are having a hard time sitting in the classroom. More than ever, a teacher's job is a hard job to do. But every year that your child is in class, that teacher has different ways that they organize the classroom. There should have been something at the beginning of the year that was like an open house. And it should have happened by now, but it may not, because different places, different rules, different things. But it is ideal to go in now and say, please tell me everything that I need to know about how your classroom runs. Yeah. Because I guarantee you, if this is happening with the homework, it's not the only thing that you don't know. And you need, and I would, just as Dr. Granpeesheh said, work on having this teacher be an ally. I would certainly be volunteering to be in the classroom, so that you can have eyes on and see what happens. But this is a critical thing for all parents, is that if you don't know how the classroom is run, you're not going to be ideal at supporting your child for what they have to do. And it's very likely that in third grade that they didn't have to turn the work in. It was sitting on their desk and the teacher came and picked it up. But now in fourth grade, there's probably a bin over there that they're supposed to know to put it in. And if your child doesn't know, as Dr. Granpeesheh said, let's not let her be penalized for this. But your child has a diagnosis. They're in a gen ed classroom. There is an aide in the classroom. So I would ask for a meeting first with the teacher and say, I want to help you with this. There's something she doesn't know. We're going to practice it at home. And you're going to get a bin like the one they have at home, and you're going to have her practice putting it in the bin, and you're going to give her a big reward, and you're going to say to the teacher, and when she puts it in the bin, I need you to send me a note home saying she did put it in the bin, so I give her another reward at home. And the teacher, what the teacher learns is, if I have a problem, I can come to you as a parent. You're not going to put it all on me. You're going to take some responsibility for it. And do volunteer in that classroom. When I first started volunteering in the classroom, they wouldn't let me be in the classroom. They kept me in the copy room, right? Because they knew I was a troublemaker. And so, but that was fine. I was happy in the copy room. You learn all kinds of stuff in the copy room. And eventually they moved me to the classroom. Eventually I was directing the school play. You know what I'm saying? It helps your kiddo. Volunteer. Yeah. If you're good at baking and you want to run the bake sale, you run the bake sale. That was not my shtick. You make it how you want it to be. But
and Shannon, I think you said a very important thing, which is if you can volunteer and observe, you learn a lot. Mm-hmm. Like I have had children who are way past doing their homework and turning it in. Like that is a very easy thing for them. But when all the other kids get up to go and put their homework in that bin, our child is distracted because they're thinking about, look at all the kids and what they're lining up, or they're thinking of something else, right? Yep. So they miss that opportunity, and it has absolutely nothing at all to do with whether or not they did their homework or anything like that. They're just distracted at that moment. Yeah. So I think it's really, really important to go in and actually, troubleshoot this and find out what's going on.
Absolutely. And I love Lucy read my mind, because as we work on this, if your child does have the diagnosis of autism, even though they're in the gen ed classroom, they should have an IEP. And because we are at this point in the semester and this has been a continual problem, Lucy says perhaps an IEP goal. Absolutely. And here's what happens when it becomes an IEP goal. Now it has a benchmark and they have to report to you at least on a quarterly basis. But you can have it written into the IEP goal that, maybe in the beginning you hear daily. After that works, you hear at the end of the week, how many days did she turn the homework in? You're enlisting the aide to, notice whether your child put the homework in. Everybody's rewarding it, and you change this behavior. You make it so that it is, so that your child actually knows, first of all, how to do it, that your child is prompted to do it, that your child gets a meaningful reward for it. Because in fourth grade, I don't know, I guess there are some kids who get all excited about a check mark for handing their homework in, but most kids don't. That it's so far disconnected from the report card. There needs to be an immediate reward for having done it.
Yeah.
So,
and of course, the challenge with IEP and IEP goals is that a lot of schools and school districts now limit the number of IEP goals that you can have for a child, right? So whenever you want to add a goal, you always have to kind of look and see what else is in there and how does this fit in with the priorities that you have.
Absolutely. That's a very good point. Lucy also said, I have the same issue with my child, completes the homework but does not turn it in. Don't know how to help him with this, but hopefully we've given you some ideas, Lucy, because it does affect your child's grades. It does affect how, what else it affects? It affects how the child looks at what you're doing at home. Because I'm just going to be honest, that teachers talk in the lounge, and if a kid's not turning in the homework, they tend to go, oh, that's the parent, right?
Yeah.
Although it's not. The homework might be done, but they're not getting it handed in. And we as parents go, my child went with it. If they didn't get it handed in, it's the teacher, right? But who loses in that, argument? The kiddo. So let's troubleshoot it. I'd love to hear back from you, Lucy, and see if any of the things we talked about work.
You said some really important things that I want to kind of reiterate here. I think that practicing and making sure that the child understands that the last step of this homework is turning it in.
Yeah.
And practicing that is a very important thing, because I think your child might completely forget that they've done the homework.
Yeah.
And that turning it in is actually the last step.
We, at every step along the way with Gem, we practiced everything at home. We practiced fire drills at home. We practiced when he was getting ready to go to kindergarten. Our BTs would set up centers in my house where there'd be a craft, and we'd be working on the craft. And we had asked for the kindergarten teacher ahead of time, how do you make them change? And she would ding this little bell. And so he learned, you ding the bell, you go to the next center, you put your material. We practice all of that with our ABA team. And I will say, I mentioned going to the open house, and anything you don't know, find out at the open house. Come with gifts. And my suggestion is to bring Kleenex and whatever writing things the kids use at that age level. Like if they're in kindergarten, bring the fat crayons, right? But always Kleenex. They can never have enough Kleenex. And it's something, no, I'm serious. Like it's the number one things that teachers ask for. They can never have enough Kleenex. And if you think about it, it means that some of the coughing and sneezing goes in the Kleenex, and maybe your child will stay healthier if your teacher has enough Kleenex. So bring pencils when the kids are older, sharpened pencils. The teachers will love you forever. Ask tons of questions. How does your classroom work? But then at the end of the year, when they have the sort of back to school night and you get to go and see everybody's projects and everything, go gush over the teacher, look at your child's projects. But then they always have they have 2 sessions for people who have second kids. Then go to the next grade level and visit all of their classrooms to see what they were doing and talk to the teachers, introduce yourself. It's how I picked all my teachers, and they know your kid already. So I would say, hi, I'm Shannon. I'm Jem's mother. And some of them would go, I know, he's amazing. I'd love to have him in my classroom. And I remember the teacher that they were talking about him going to her classroom. And I said, hi, I'm Shannon. I'm Jem's mom. And she was like, uh-huh. And I went, oh, yeah, no, he's not going to that classroom. You know what I mean? And I was like, no, I don't think so. I saw her classroom. I don't think it's a good fit.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? I'm terrible. But
No, but you have to. Those are the things you do, and it's so important to the child's development, 100%.
yeah, I mean,
my kids still talk about their favorite teachers and the ones that had a positive impact on them. So a teacher can be really, really influential on a child's development.
absolutely. Okay, I need to get to a couple of these questions. I'm 27. I am autistic. My girlfriend is mad at me because she says I don't know how to plan a date. I did not know that it was something that had to be planned. Where can I learn how to plan a date? I just love this.
I know, I love it too. That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, as I said, Shannon, that the skill of breaking things down into smaller parts and then establishing a timeline and writing out as much as you can about what happens in each of those smaller parts is a skill that applies to anything and so many different things, whether it's planning a date or, a million other things, how to apply for college, how to apply to a job, whatever it might be. So again, if you are planning a date, you do pretty much the same steps. So you look and determine, okay, what are the subparts of this date? So what is the transportation? What is the location that we're going to do? What is what actually happens at that location? And then how do we end the night? And once you have the subparts listed out, you obviously want to think about a little bit more detail. Okay, so who is going to transport us? Are we going to Uber there? What are we going to do? Where are we going? And how, do I need to make reservations? And things like what should I wear? What should she wear? Do I need to do anything that makes the whole thing a little bit more special? Do I order for her? Do we order together? What kind of, I want to make sure I have enough money for this date. All the details that go into every subsection of this overall thing. And then, of course, you invite and it ends with making sure that you invite the girlfriend on the correct time and date and enjoy it. But yeah, planning is one of those things that really helps every aspect of life. So sounds like a fun aspect to engage in.
Well, and I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but there is an element of perspective taking to this. Thinking about,
absolutely.
But I love, because I think there's two different types of men in this generation. They're the ones who've watched The Bachelor and they think they have to go scuba diving for every date, right? They think it's got to be, something that will be memorable forever. And then there are the guys who are like, I thought we were just going to hang out and watch a baseball game. And don't realize, no, you have to actually do something for the date. You have to go somewhere or do an activity or watch a movie. You don't have to rearrange the world for it. You don't have to have a private jet, take them to Paris. You don't have to spend lots of money. You can go for a walk in a park. But you need to do something, and you have to consider what the other person might be interested in and what you would be interested in, right?
Right. And that's such a big part of it, Shannon, and thanks for saying that, because really it does have a lot to do with kind of taking the other person's perspective. Like you said, Shannon, like maybe it wouldn't be appropriate to go to a car rally because your girlfriend or, I don't know, in this case, your partner is not interested in that, but they are interested in, let's say, having a picnic in the park. So you really do have to think about what the other person is interested in. Absolutely. Now, the other side of this is also just making sure that there's balance. Like one of the things that I think for our kids becomes really important, and I think a lot of it has to do when I look at older adults who have just moved on and doing well in their lives, I think they sometimes struggle with what is enough. And they always feel like they have to do a little bit more. And that also can be unhealthy. So I feel like it's also important to make sure that, let's say you're planning a date, not every single time that you go out has to be massively planned. you can also have times where you don't have a plan and you just go down the street and catch some ice cream together or whatever it is. So not every date has to be that planned. So there can be some dates that are very well planned, other dates that are just, hey, we're together tonight, what should we do? So that's also part of it. And the last part of it is also making sure that you also are doing things that you enjoy.
Yeah.
Right? The importance of this is that it has to be fair to everyone. And that's what makes a good relationship, is that both people are planning, both people are contributing, and both people are taking care of each other. So that sometimes the dates will be things that you want to do, and other times it'll be things that your partner wants to do. Sometimes there'll be things that you both engage in. So that's another part of it that's important as well.
And it can be so much fun. Just recently because one of the places that I taught was at BYU, Brigham Young University. And let me just tell you, the guys would outdo themselves there with date planning. And my favorite was, there was a young man, because I'm working in the theater building, and they had a freight elevator. And he made a whole set in the freight elevator that, was a table, and there was music, and there was candlelight and everything. I think it was like a light bulb candlelight, not real fire. But he served her dinner in the freight elevator. And unfortunately, people were trying to use it. So sometimes the elevator would be called, but it was hilarious. And I remember the girl saying, it was so creative. That he got massive points for that. So anyway, I just think that kind of stuff is fun. It can be really exciting and a way to reveal who you are to the person that you're dating, because dating is really supposed to be about getting to know the person and seeing if you have mutual interests, if you can be good friends, and if there is a special spark there as well. Listen to me as if I know that much about dating.
I love that.
I don't at all. Okay, really quickly, can you please help me to get my teenage son to clean his own room?
Oh, I love that. Yes. So that one, we've talked a lot about planning and kind of breaking things down into subsections. So here we go, and you have to apply it to that again here. When you say clean his own room, what does that really entail? And what are the subsections to that? Like, obviously, it's tidying is part of it, putting things away, having an organization system, which is probably where you're going to have to work on the most. But then it's also things like cleaning the floors, mopping or vacuuming, washing the windows, tidying the bed, those types of things. So you have to make it into little chunks and define exactly what each chunk is. But then I think it's really important also to make sure that each section has its own, like your child is able to do those things, and also it really understands what each section has involved. So, for example, putting your clothes away doesn't involve just taking your clothes and putting them in a drawer. It also involves being able to fold clothing, right? So go into great detail in terms of being able to complete each section, and sometimes you might want to focus on one section or another. And it involves having some sort of set organization system. Is there a place for, junk that is usually lying around? Is there a drawer that could be assigned to that? How do you organize? The way you organize clothing is completely different than the way you organize, let's say, computer things or tech items. So making sure that the individual has a really good organization system in place, and then being able to break it down and understand the little tasks that are involved in each section.
Yeah.
And then the most important of all is motivation. Like, what is going to motivate your child to actually do these things? And I think you need to have a reward system in place that is very clear, whether, and depending on the age of your child, it could be a monetary system, go clean up your room and I'll give you $10, whatever it is. But you need to make sure that there's a reinforcer for actually cleaning it up and keeping it clean on a specific schedule. So that's really big part of it. And part of the reason our teenagers don't do that is because it's more rewarding. They are not as bothered by the mess. So there's no aversive process to it. It's just more rewarding for them to do something else other than cleaning their room.
Absolutely. But I always think of one of our colleagues that went into a 17-year-old's home with this kind of a question and helped them to identify what all the things were that needed to be, put away or available. The child was an artist that would draw. And so there were pencils, and there were the graphite pencils here and the colored pencils here and the markers here. And there was a specific cup for them. And they cleaned up the room in one day. And the parent was like, I don't know what happened. And the room stayed relatively clean because they understood, as you said, what the system was. And part of the payoff for them was when they needed to draw, everything was where they needed to find it.
Space. Yeah. And also, I want to say, as a parent, I know that we're very busy, but if you have the time to do this with your child, it can be a very fun activity, and you'll learn a lot about your child as you're helping them organize.
Amen to that. I've kept you longer than I agreed to. I adore you. I hope you feel better. Thank you. You are a light in all of our lives. We're all so grateful for you. Please go rest and feel better.
Thank you very much. It was nice to see everyone.
It's good to see you as well. I'm going to remind everybody before we go, tomorrow on the show, we have Matt Asner and Nava Paskowitz Asner. They're doing the It's a Wonderful Life that they've been doing for the last couple of years. But this year, it's the entire cast of the SpongeBob SquarePants that will be doing it. So they're going to talk with us about that. So that's tomorrow's show. You won't want to miss that. And we've got some exciting toys to talk about as well. So we'll see you tomorrow. Until then, give your kiddos a hug from me and one for you too. Bye-bye for now.
Bye, everyone.
Don't forget, you can watch Ask Dr. Doreen live every Tuesday morning at 10 a.m. Pacific time. We hope to see you there.